How do I get someone into anime? Whether you're trying to get your parents, your friends, or some stranger into it is a question that all anime fans will eventually ask themselves. The only problem is, what anime should I show someone as a gateway anime? Everyone had a gateway anime at one point, but with so many anime out there, which one should I show them? That is why I made a list of what I believe to be the top 10 best gateway anime out there. This isn't a list of the most popular anime, and nor will it be a list of my favorites. I also will not have many long runners in here, but instead this will be a list of the anime I believe will be liked by most people and make them want to come back for more. Also, please keep in mind that not everyone will like every single anime on this list, so make sure you show them the best anime that fits their personality. Oh, and this is my opinion, so you may disagree. So let us begin. This is a show that a lot of people hate, claiming that it's a mediocre action show, and they are kind of right. After I finished the show, I started to see how horrible it is, but while I was watching it, I loved every second of it. This anime is the equivalent of one of those stupid action movies that people love but admit are bad. This is not a show you should use to get someone who analyzes their entertainment into anime, but if you know someone who would like an action show that is just pure fun, then this is the show to show them. Eden of the East is something that's pretty rare in anime. Most of the time whenever an anime attempts to be a mystery show, it ends up being episodic. And although I have no problem with episodic shows, they rarely give you that feeling of, I need to watch the next episode like immediately. That is where Eden of the East comes in. It is a story-driven mystery anime that actually manages to not be episodic. That makes Eden of the East the best option to get your friend who likes mystery into anime. Eden of the East is one of those mysteries that will keep you guessing all the way through and make you want to watch the next episode right after the last one. Okay, I am sure if you have seen Usagi Drop, you are probably very confused about why a show about how hard it is yet rewarding it is to raise children is in a list of the top 10 gateway anime, considering that only targets a very small demographic of the anime watchers. Eden of the East is one, and well, you'd be right. This is not the type of anime that you use to get a teenager into anime. This is the type of anime you'd show to your mother. I know to some people that may sound like a really weird concept, but trust me, I know there's people out there who want it. And for those people, there really is no better show than this. Lagoon is one of those mature action shows that manages to surpass most others in its genre. It is like the Die Hard of anime, and a demographic that likes Die Hard is most likely going to be a demographic that likes the show. This anime feels very Western in nature. It feels like something you'd see out of Hollywood back in the 1980s, back when the Rambo and Die Hard were in theaters. This show does have some anime tropes in, which usually makes it harder for it to be a gateway anime. But this show managed to overpower that with an 80s action movie trope. Also, to add on to what I said for number 8, if Usagi Drop is a show to get your mom into anime, then Black Lagoon is definitely a show to get your dad into anime. It has a lot of great action, a good story, and awesome gameplay. This is the only shoujo anime on this list, and for good reason. Although I have nothing against shoujo anime, I do think they make terrible gateway animes. They usually use a lot of anime tropes that people who don't usually watch anime would not understand. That just leaves them to be not very accessible to newcomers. This show, on the other hand, is the exception. Although it does have a lot of anime tropes, it normally keeps them very lighthearted in shoujo anime. That makes this show far more accessible to the general public. Again, now this is not the type of show you should show to a manly man, but it is a great way to get people in anime who are looking for something lighthearted. Cowboy Bebop is one of those shows that people in the anime community hold quite highly. I personally don't find the series that great as a whole, but what I do find great are the individual episodes of the show. What I mean by that is to just show people individual episodes and not the series as a whole, starting at episode 1 and ending at 26. This is because every episode is relatively self-contained, and each one relies on the rule of cool. This show also is very Western in nature, and combine that with the rule of cool, it makes it a super easy anime to get into. So, if you know anyone who would like something like that, this is probably your pick. When I look for a gateway anime, I usually look for something that's stereotype breaking, especially when I try showing it. In the minds of most adults, animation is seen as something that only kids would watch, and that is the stereotype and each one relies. That is where a show like this comes in. This show follows police officers in a future version of Japan that greatly resembles the book 1980. The great thing about this show is that it does a great job at emphasizing that there is no real good guy or bad guy in this scenario. Yes, there is the terrorist versus police plot in the show, but the show makes you empathize with terrorist goals to the point where you do start questioning yourself. Is it possible that the ends actually can justify the means? Meanwhile, while all this is happening, the police are still protecting the peace. But in the end, they are still protecting the old. The great thing about this show is very complex themes, and in the end always show that there is never a right or wrong answer. This is a show that stands out because it can easily break the stereotypes like the animations for kids. Assuming you are not watching this video from some future time, several years from now, you have probably already heard of this show, and most likely have seen at least part of it. But if you are from the future, or you've just been living under a rock for the past year and a half, let me explain the show to you. This show is the most hyped show of 2013, and it is yet to come down from that hype. Doesn't matter which anime community you go to, you will likely find discussions about the show there. It has been called overrated by many, and I don't totally disagree with them. But as you can see, I do think quite highly of the show for it to be this high on the list. So let me explain why it is here. This show is just so addictive, especially at the beginning. This show can also be a stereotype-breaking anime that breaks the idea that animation is just for kids. Granted, to a lesser extent than the previous. So the reason this anime is so high on the list is because of how addictive it is and how stereotype-breaking this anime is. But I do believe the next anime does this a little better. I have previously in a video stated that I think this show is one of the greatest gateway anime out there, and I mean that. This show does everything I said the previous show did, from breaking stereotypes to being addictive, and just does it. This show was actually the second show I ever watched, and it was the one that turned me into an anime fan. But heck, for a while I would even call this show my favorite anime, because of the way it made you rethink things in a video. This is where the show has similarities to Psycho-Pass, because the moral ambiguity lets the viewer decide who is right, while at the same time showing that there is no right or wrong answer to the questions presented. So to summarize, this show has all the addictiveness of Attack on Titan, with all the stereotype-breaking moral ambiguity of Psycho-Pass. It is the best of both worlds and my favorite. Now before I move on to number 1, let's look through a few of the honorable mentions that didn't make it. Code Geass is a fun show that would make a great gateway anime for much of the same reason Death Note is. But because of how similar the two are and how I think Death Note is better, I left it out. Log Horizon is a great show about being trapped in a video game. It is generally considered to be better than Sword Art Online, and I actually agree with this. But I felt that Sword Art Online is a lot easier for new viewers to get into, so I had to leave it out. This is a really good mafia show taking place in New York in the 20s and 30s. It is reminiscent of movies like Pulp Fiction, and that is unfortunately the problem. This show, much like Pulp Fiction, is told out of order, which although works really well in the show, is intimidating and confusing to people who have never watched anime before. And lastly, Silver Spoon. This anime is one most people probably won't even know about because it aired back in summer of 2013 and was immediately overshadowed by Attack on Titan, even though it was written by Hiromu Arakawa, the author of Fullmetal. The problem with this show is that although it tells a really good story, the story is not about a subject that most people care about. Oh, and speaking about things that Hiromu Arakawa has made is what for a while I was debating whether to put Death Note or Fullmetal Alchemist as number 1, but in the end, Fullmetal Alchemist would always come out on top. So Fullmetal Alchemist, in my opinion, is one of the best shonen manga ever written. This show has so much of what I said about the other shows, from the addictiveness of shows like Attack on Titan and Sword Art Online, with its intense action, to the compelling story and moral ambiguity of shows like Psycho-Pass and Death Note. Heck, the first episode of this show introduces the theme of religion, and why so many people find comfort in their religious doctrine, no matter how insane it might be. And it manages to do that without being controversial in the slightest. You know you have found something great when a show can actually manage so much of what I said. On the topic of Brotherhood versus the original, as much as I really do love the original and think that everyone should see it at some point, I really can't justify the original as a gateway anime when Brotherhood exists. Brotherhood just has better animation, better voice acting in both dub and sub, and most importantly, a better story. This show has everything a gateway anime needs. So that was my top 10 gateway anime list. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe and follow me at Twitter at MattBenz99. And I hope you'll tune in to see you at some point.